I'm glad to see everybody here. But anyway, what we're going to do, we're going to start off our program here. I'm going to recite this poem. I think there's 29 stanzas in there. I didn't count them. But I got to tell you that for several years I was a registered nurse up at Fort Meade, and I lived in Rapid City. And I copied this poem out of that book that Finney's got there. And I put a page of this on my dash. And at the end of the year, I knew this poem pretty good. But I have yet to recite it to a group of studious folks like yourself. So we're going to do that today. And you folks that are following along, you'll see that there's some notes on a couple places there. So when you come to those notes, then you do what it says, okay? All right? Okay, here we go. I would like to present myself as coming in from the gold fields. I went to, we're talking about the Klondike Gold Rush now. I went to the Canadian Ladies' Aid Society, bought this brand new flannel shirt, bought a used pair of jeans, and a guy from Australia gave me his hat when he got on board the steamboat back to San Francisco, because he had all the gold he could carry. And I was just getting started. So anyway, we go into the Red Dog Saloon, which is kind of down towards the waterfront in Dawson City, and it's kind of a rough place. But look at all these nice folks here that came in for a drink, and they're going to hear me recite this poem, okay? So anyway, I'm going to consult this every now and then, but there are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. Those Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. Those northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Labarge when I cremated Sam McGee. Now, Sam McGee was from Tennessee where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the South to roam around a pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell. Though he'd often say in his homely way, I'd sooner live in hell. Now, on Christmas Day, we were mushing our way on down a Dawson Trail. Speak of your cold, through the parka's fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. And if our eyes we'd close, our lashes froze, and sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. That very night, we lay wrapped tight in our robes beneath the snow. The dogs were fed, and high overhead, the stars are dancing to and fro. Well, he looks at me, and Captain, says he, this trip I cash in, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you will grant my last request. Well, he seemed so low, I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of a moan, it's this cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. Yet tain't being dead, it's my awful dread of that icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear, foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains. Well, a pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I said I would not fail. And we started on at the streak of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. He crouched on his sleigh and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee. And by nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. Now, there wasn't a breath in that land of death as I hurried horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, but it seemed to say, you may tax your brawn and your brains, but you promise true, and it's up to you to cremate those last remains. Now, a promise made is a debt unpaid, and a trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows. Oh God, how I loathe that thing. Very good, very good. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow. But on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in. And I'd often sing to that hateful thing, and it would hearken with a grin. Then I came to the marge of Lake LaBarge, and a derelict there did lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was named the Alice May. Well, I looked at it, and then I thought a bit. Then I looked at my frozen chum. Then here, says I, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. So some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was laying around, and I heaped the fire higher. Well, the flames soared and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom did see. Then I burrowed a hole in that glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Well, I took a hike because I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. Then the heavens scowled, and the huskies growled, and the wind began to blow. And the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out and they danced about ere I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, so it's time I looked. So the door I opened wide, and there sat Sam, looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace roar. He wore a smile, you could see a mile, and he said, please close that door, for it's warm in here, and I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and storm. Since I left Plumtree down in Tennessee, this is the first time I've been warm. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. Those Arctic trails had their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake LaBarge when I cremated Sam McGee. So anyway, as you can see by some of the stuff I laid out here, I've made 4 trips to the Yukon Territory. I had a placer claim on Bonanza Creek. It's a long ways to go for an ounce of gold. It's 4,000 miles. But I always go up there around June 21st, so you can drive all day long and not even know it. I can drive from here to Dawson City in 2.5 days. And that's stopping to fish and look at the wildlife, Anyway, it's a lot of fun going up there. You have to accept the fact that there's a lot of mosquitoes, and that's why they make insect repellent. But there's a lot of stuff up there. I've been up there several years. I haven't been up there for several years. Now, the deal is Canada gets $3 out of every $10 in gold you can find. And I don't think they know what environment means up there. Because when I left, there must have been 100 dredges on the Stewart River the last time, and that water looked like a Hershey dark chocolate candy bar, because the government was getting so much money off of the gold that was recovered, But there's a lot to see up there, and there's a lot to do. My claim was on Bonanza Creek. I think it was like number 6 below Bonanza Creek. Now, when you go to Canada to file a mining claim, you don't have to walk along with your compass or your, heaven forbid, GPS unit, because they give you a map. And And this map has got all the mining claims already figured out on it. So all you do is get that map at the government office and go fill in the little circle where you want your mining claim to be. So it works out okay. And there's a lot of gold still to be found up there. And there's not very many hard rock mines up there. There was a hard rock mine on the road from Grand Forks down to Dawson City. And it was managed or operated by some folks from India. It must have been a pretty good mine because they had 4 guys marching around it with M16s. So they were getting a lot of gold out of it. And there was a mountain of quartz there. I mean, there's a mountain. And you see this in the Black Hills. Some quartz, I call it rotten quartz because you can just pick it up and it just crumbles in your hand. But they were getting free gold out of there, where all those cracks were, there was gold in there. And they were bringing that gold down off of that mountain in earth movers. And they were dumping it there. Then they had a guy in a bulldozer pushing it into a rotary trommel. Biggest one I've ever seen. It must have been 50, 60 feet long. So they were getting a lot of gold out of it. But anyway, that's one of the only hard rock mines I can think of up there. So, but placer mining, see, all that stuff is just like here in the Black Hills, you know. There was a mountain over there, 2,000 feet tall, you know. There's nothing there now. Last million years, it's eroded nothing. Well, that's how it is up there in the Klondike. All those mountains with gold-bearing ore in it are all eroded. So that's why you see so much gold in the streams up there. But yeah, it's a fun place to visit. Has anybody in here ever been up there before? Okay, all right. There is a little dredge up there, the other side of Chicken, Alaska. And that dredge was about 4 miles down the road from my house out here on the Mystic Road. And it was operated by the Evans family out of Denver. And they got all the gold they could get, which wasn't very much because it didn't go down deep enough. Plus the slate there sits on end, you know, so the gold is down in the cracks. Anyway, they took it out to John Day, Oregon, and they used it out there. And then they took it apart again, and they shipped it up to Alaska, and that's a little gold dredge. It's on dry land now, the other side of Chicken. Chicken, Alaska is right across the Yukon River. And do you know why they call it Chicken?
I think we heard once.
Chicken, Alaska is called Chicken because the birds up there were ptarmigans, and nobody knew how to spell ptarmigans. So they called the town Chicken. That's just like next to the Franklin Hotel up in Deadwood is Shine Street. Well, it wasn't Shine Street, it was Cheyenne Street, but nobody knew how to spell Cheyenne, so it's called Shine Street. But anyway, that's part of the folklore of being up there in the Yukon. Good place to visit. And next time I go up, I know I'm going to find a big nugget, you know. So anyway, I have some names here on that piece of cardboard. The second name, that was a guy from Hayward. What's the second name?
Alex.
What is it?
Alex.
Okay, Alex. Alex was from Hayward. Hayward was a big placer mining town over here where Rushmore Cave is. And near as I can figure out, I think he came to the Black Hills with money because he might have had a mining claim, but he didn't work it. But all the people in Hayward, or a lot of the people in Hayward, when they wanted real money, gold coins or folding money, they came to him because he had a big box full of money. And he would trade them folding money or gold coins for the gold dust that they'd found. So anyway, him and his son decided to go to the Klondike for the gold rush. And on the way up there, he died. And so his son came back, took the money his dad had, and came back. I forgot to mention that when he went up there, when Alex went up there, he only took like $2,000, $3,000 with him. And the rest of it he buried over there, somewhere around Hayward. So anyway, his son came back with his dad's money, but he never found the rest of the money that his dad had buried. So it's over there someplace. So That's why you should all buy a metal detector, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, that's for Alex. The next person on there is,
Captain Jack.
oh yeah. You know, everybody knows who Captain Jack is, right? Jack Crawford, Captain Crawford. He, the cabin down here in Way Park was actually built by a second lieutenant in the Army. I think his name was May. So anyway, the Army kind of left and turned a blind eye to all the people coming into the Black Hills during the gold rush. And Doc Flick moved into that cabin. And then I think Doc Flick went away when the Army chased everybody out. So the cabin was taken over by Captain Jack Crawford. Kind of a ne'er-do-well guy. I haven't discovered that he ever had a job either. Anyway, when Doc Flick came back, well, here his cabin was, with somebody's stuff in there. So he took it all out and threw it out on the ground, and he moved his stuff in there. So that was one of the first lawsuits in the Black Hills, is when Doc Flick sued Captain Jack Crawford for occupying his log cabin. Jack moved on up towards the northern hills. We're getting a little ways away from Custer, but we're not to Deadwood yet. So he planted himself in Rockerville, but that was before it was Rockerville. Before it was Rockerville, it was called Captain Jack's Dry Diggings, because supposedly he found some gold there, I guess. But anyway, the town was named after him. And then he did go to Deadwood. The next time anybody hears from him, he's up there in the Klondike Territory. He's up in Dawson City. And he is so presumptuous that he gives a big speech on the 4th of July in Canada. They don't give a damn about the 4th of July. So anyway, he was kind of a ne'er-do-well guy. And to be honest with you, I don't know whatever happened to him. But that's a pretty nice book on him, and we can only assume that some family member wrote that book, right? So that's Captain Jack. And there's a lot of photographs in there, including him giving the speech on the 4th of July in downtown Dawson. Okay, the next guy, the guy on the bottom there is Bob Florman. Now, if you were here last week or last month when Dr. Wolf gave his talk, he talked about Bob Florman. Bob was a guy that started a gold mine over to Greenwood on Box Elder Creek, and it didn't amount to anything. So he went bankrupt, the company went bankrupt. So the next time you hear about Bob, he's up in the Klondike with his daughter. Now there's two things said about Bob Florman meeting his demise. He either got killed rescuing people in a mine accident, or he died in San Francisco. I've read two different accounts of him. One of the accounts is that him and his daughter went to Dawson City, went to the Klondike, and his daughter had received a degree as a mining engineer from some university out in California, the first woman to have a degree like that. So I don't know what happened to him. What I do know is that my house in Rapid City on 5th Street is part of the Florman addition. And there's a whole half a block of buildings downtown that he built. One thing you got to remember is that the Black Hills has a black eye from mining lawsuits and stuff like that. But what's happened is that these people found gold and they wanted to build a mine. So they sold stock certificates. Usually it's $1 a share. And they were going along pretty good. You know, they might have been stamping gold out, but they ran out of money. Or they hit water. Or they lost the vein. Well, they needed more money to buy a pump. Or they needed more money to do some more drilling to look for the vein. They didn't have that money, so that was the end of your mining claim, or that was the end of your mining company. So there's a lot of mines out in the hills full of water that still have a lot of gold in them. They just need a pump to get the pump out. I got to say that I had the opportunity to go down in the bottom of Homestake Mining Company, 8,700 feet. The last 30 feet is a sump. That's where the water drains into. And the big pump they have down there at the bottom of the mine is actually a steam engine run by a 100 horsepower electric motor. And that steam engine has been converted to a water pump. And that steam engine's been down there forever, you know. So, okay, so then we're talking about, we got Alex out of the way, and Captain Jack, and Bob. Now the guy, the name on the top there, his name is 4A Hilsinger. The impossible name, but back in the day, 4A was not a real common name, but it was a name, a male's name, 4A. And 4A Hilsinger was my Uncle Charlie's uncle. And I think he came from down around Oral, because there's Hilsingers down there, and I think that my grandmother had been a Hilsinger, or she was related to him. But anyway, 4A Hilsinger, or Doré Hilsinger, I'm sorry, Doré, he was out in San Francisco, and he left and he went to the Yukon Territory. But he went up there early. He got up there in April of 1898. A lot of people got up there too late, and when they got there, you know, there was like 100,000 people up there. But a lot of people, when they got there, it's too late. All the mining claims had been already taken, and people were selling their mining claims for up to $50,000, and people were still getting $100,000 worth of gold out of them. But anyway, Doré, I think he became successful. I don't know, maybe not. But anyway, when I was up there, I went into the government offices. It's like a big old army barracks, longer. And that's where they have the offices today. And I approached this one lady in the mining claim area, and I told her about this guy, Doré Hilsinger, who went up there during the gold rush. And when I got back to my house in Rapid City, here's a letter from him, and they had a copy of his mining claim certificate in there. The Canadians do a great job with keeping records, you know. And his mining claim certificate was in Grand Forks. Grand Forks used to have 40,000 people in it. It was in Grand Forks, downstream from Discovery, and I think it was only the fourth or fifth mining claim downstream. So he got a lot of gold out of there, right? And I was discussing with Tim and Paul. He decided to go to Nome in like 1899 because they were discovering gold on the beaches in Nome, right? Well, he didn't go down the Yukon River on a steamship and then go around the corner and on up to Nome. He walked overland. It's over 300 miles. He disappeared. Nobody ever heard from him again. So, you know, if he got really rich mining in Dawson City, I don't think he carried 200 pounds of gold with him like a lot of people coming in from San Francisco did. But so what happened to the gold he had? Maybe he buried it up there someplace. But anyway, he did find a lot of gold, or we surmise he found a lot of gold, but he just disappeared. So going overland, there were hazards. There were like grizzly bears, there's wild animals. And then there was your buddy who was following along behind with a 30-30, you know. So, you know, what happened to him, you know. So that's what Mr. Hilsinger's story is. And who brought their metal detecting tracers with them? Gary's got a railroad spike. There it is right there. That's from a mine. That's a mining railroad spike. The smallest you'll ever see. Smaller than a narrow gauge spike. I found this well, wait a minute. I can't say that. I found this on private property due to the Antiquities Act, right? So it weighs 45 pounds. And I carried it. I carried it 2 miles.
Was it closed or open?
No, when I found it, the springs were wrapped around. Because when I found it, it was buried underneath a huge spruce tree, and it was like in a pit that was lined with slate. So it was pretty well preserved. And I've never put C-clamps on it to see how good the springs work, but that's how you set them, you use C-clamps on them. And that's got the teeth built into it. Now, these bear traps up in Alaska and Yukon and Canada, they're forbidden. So when people find one, the Native Americans set them, and when people find one, they'll take it out in the middle of a pond and dump it overboard. I mean, can you imagine putting your foot in that out in the middle of somewhere, And I don't know whether bears can't read. I don't know if people posted signs saying, danger, there's a bear trap in this vicinity or not. I don't know.
So you think you found it in the pit that somebody set up to catch a bear?
No, it was secreted there.
Oh, okay.
It was hidden there, yeah. Like I said, one of the springs was turned in that way and the other was turned the other way. But when I found it, I started uncovering the top of the jaws, and I thought it was just a steel rim off of a wagon wheel. So I get to digging and come up with that. That chain that was on there is hand-forged chain, and it was just a mass of solid rust. Okay? Now, how do you derust a chain? You tie it on the back of your pickup, and you drive down 6 Mile Road to the windmill. Then you turn around, you drive back, and it comes out just slick as a whistle. That's how you get the rust out of there. So that's a couple things there that I found that were. I've found a bunch of those brass tent rope tighteners. I forgot to bring those. I think you have some of those. Yeah. And this location where I found this, there's the remains of a log cabin there. The cabin itself, the chimney and fireplace are the only thing standing. When I found it, there was like 2 logs left of the bottom course of the building, and the logs had holes drilled into them. And what they did back then, they drilled those holes in there, and they put sticks in there, and that was their bed, If they're lucky enough to get planed lumber or sawn lumber, they put the lumber on there. Otherwise, they just filled it full of pine boughs, But anyway, outside that cabin, I have found 58 caliber cartridges with an inside primer. Does that mean anything to you? It's not a replaceable primer. The primer's on the inside, so they're only good for one shot. 58 caliber. And then I found a multitude of 44 Henrys with a double firing pin imprint. So that leads me to believe that whatever happened there happened well in advance of Custer's expedition. Now, there was a lot of people in the Black Hills before Custer got here. Over to Hayward, prospectors were digging, and 20 feet underneath the ground, they found a skeleton of a guy with silver-rimmed spectacles on his skull. Up to Central City, I was going to mention that, where the Maitland Road hit Central City, right there at that intersection. When they were building a garage there, and they uncovered a skeleton of a 7-foot-tall guy with a chain wrapped around him, chained to an old stump underneath the ground. So anyway, it just goes on and on about all these incidents of people being in the Black Hills, before Custer expedition, a lot of people. If you go down Rapid Creek, where Rapid Creek hits the Cheyenne River, there was a trading post down there. And of course, the guy came in with some dynamite that was frozen, the nitroglycerin, gets real gummy. So he puts it in a frying pan, puts it on the stove, Well, they say that you can go down there nowadays and with a metal detector, you can find these traps laying all over the place from where his business blew up. I don't know if that's true or not, but what's the guy's name in Rapid City that had no hands? Shaky Jack? Hooky Jack, yeah. That's what happened to him too. He was a enterprising miner or something. He blew his hands off, so they made a policeman out of him. Yep. And Paul has a picture of him in one of his books. Yep. So anyway, there's all kinds of stories up here, and we could go on. But one thing I have to point out to you. I was hoping Dr. Ron was going to be here, but he's not here. I live on the east side of Redfern Mountain. Dr. Ron lives on the west side. He's retired professor from the School of Mines. And I got to take this over to him. You can come up and look at this when we're done here. I don't know if I should touch that or not. This is amalgam. Now, amalgam is what you find. I wonder how I got that in there. When you have a gold mill set up, and you have the stamps, stamps go up and down, pulverize the gravel, or if you have a ball mill where you throw iron balls in there, or rocks, or if you have a rod mill where you put rods in there. Anyway, the purpose is to pulverize this ore, and it comes out of the stamp mill or comes out of the ball mill with water. You can't run a mine without water, or run a mill without water. So this, they call it a slurry, goes over an inclined table like this. And this table's made out of copper. Well, you get your paintbrush and your jar of mercury and you start painting that coating that copper with mercury. And the stuff coming out of the ball mill, this slurry, runs over that mercury-covered inclined copper sheet, and it attracts the gold just like a magnet attracts iron. Okay? Now, you run that, and every now and then you shut down the mill, and you take a squeegee. They used to have squeegees made out of leather. And you squeegee that amalgam off those plates. It's got mercury mixed in with it, and it dries and it sets up just like that. But it's real fragile. You can hit that with a hammer and it'll just shatter. But anyway, those rocks contain mercury, contain copper, gold, and silver. And that amalgam there was given to my grandfather. My grandfather was a physician down in Hot Springs. That's his book right there. Was given to my grandfather in lieu of payment for a surgery or medical care or something like that. And I think that was probably given to him back in the 1920s. He came out here in 1890. I remember him well. He was almost 100. So anyway, that's what amalgam looks like. So there might be a lot of gold in there. Who knows? I think the thing weighs about 40 pounds. I have another piece that wouldn't fit in there too. One final incident behind the School of Mines, on top of that hill there, was the smokestack for the National Smelter. And they built it there because the rail lines ran through there, see? And they had this custom smelter set up that they would smelt ore from different mines in the Black Hills. Well, I guess it worked after a fashion. I think that it would have worked better if they would have had more customers. But anyway, there was a kid, he was like in his 20s, married, bunch of children. He wasn't making enough money, and they gave him a retort. Now, you melt this down. You put this in a big iron kettle, and you melt it, and you distill the copper off of it. So what you have left is bullion, which contains copper, silver, and gold. So anyway, they entrusted this kid to put this 300-pound ingot in this spring wagon and take it down to the railroad to ship it to Omaha for further refining. Well, he got to thinking, and God, things weren't going very well with him. So he decided to take it. And he's headed east on that road down where Highway 44 is now. In this spring wagon, pulled by probably only one horse, and he's bouncing along and he's crossing the creek, not really knowing what he's doing. Pretty soon he looks back there, and there's a big hole in his wagon, but the 400 pounds of retort is not there. And they never did find it. National Smelter, yeah, you'll see pictures of it, and there's a whole series of little shacks in a zigzag. And the National Smelter had that set up because the smoke coming out of the smokestack was so nauseous, and people had such a big objection to it that they made this zigzag buildings so that the smoke would condense, so they could go in there and clean it out, clean the carbon and all the bad stuff off the walls of it. Yeah. Yeah, there's up on top of that hill, there's a windmill up there now. There's red bricks all over up there from the smokestack. And then where the parking lot is behind the football field, well, that's where the buildings were. So they were ready-made, that parking lot, or the landscaping was ready-made. That black bottle is genuine black glass. Very hard to find. I've got 3 of them. And I found that in the garbage pile at the Ivanhoe gold mine out in Custer. No, I found it on private property, I'm sorry. But it's black glass.
You don't want us all to touch it.
Yeah, you can't see through it. You can get the strongest flashlight and it won't show through it.
What concoction would have been inside that bottle?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what it would have been. Would it have been something that they wanted to protect from sunlight, or, I don't know. This, of course, is pretty old. It's got the applied top on it. I guess I'd be remiss in saying about my first experiences up north there. I'm down in Fort Benning, Georgia. I'm a combat engineer with the Rangers, and I'm on a flight to Vietnam. I'm at SeaTac, and I get off the airplane because we're going over on, was it Pan Am? Actually, I think we were going over on Air America, which is run by the CIA. But anyway, I get into the SeaTac, and they call my name. They said I'd report to ticketing. So I go over there, and the lady says, Sergeant Hargens, I have this packet of information for you. Well, they detoured me from Vietnam to Alaska, and I was assigned to the Gerstle River Test Area up in Alaska. And the Gerstle River Test Area was established during World War II. And there's stuff up there that we don't even want to hear about. There are ponds up there where a tree blew over, and the sunlight gets in there and it melts the permafrost. So every year that pond gets bigger and bigger, right? And when I finally came back down south here, I'm reading a thing in the paper about Blueberry Lake, which was one of these, I call them glacial lakes. It wasn't more than 100 yards from where I was living at, in a insulated Quonset hut. Anyway, they said that they had pumped the water out of Blueberry Lake and found a 55-gallon drum of nerve gas at the bottom of that lake, right? And there's a lot of stuff up there. Out there on the tundra in the muskeg, there are tracks up there that looks like they were made yesterday. They were made during World War II. It's so fragile that once the soil is disturbed, then nothing will grow back in there. Now, the terrible thing about my project, I was just following orders. We had a square of land. It's called the Gerstle River Test Area. And I think each side of that square was 4 miles. And my job was to put a fence around that area. And every one of us on that crew was from a different Army post because it was a top secret deal, right? And it was a 4-strand barbed wire fence, and they bought us the barbed wire. They bought us a fence post, but they didn't furnish us with any of the little twisted metal brackets to hold it in place. So when you're doing something like that, you grab a hold of the wire on this side, and then you reach underneath and twist it and then wrap it up, see? Well, prior to that, we took a bulldozer in there. You can see where this is going. And we made a bulldozer path 4 miles long on each side, 16 miles. Well, later on one of my first trips back up there, I go to the Gerstle River Test Area, and I ring the call box that I'd installed when I was up there. Says, can I come in? I want to go up on the west side, up towards the glacier. And the guy, he doesn't even come out. He says, no, you can't do that. He says, go away. I just parked my car there, and I walked down to the end of the fence I built and step over the fence because there's a vehicle trail through there, see? Anyway, that entire area, all 16 miles, the sunlight had got in there and melted the permafrost. So there's 16 miles of swamp. It's terrible. And there is no barbed wire left because the moose got in there, see? In Whitehorse, if you go to the museum, there's moose antler in there, a skeleton. And they figured it's got 4 miles of telephone wire wrapped around its antlers. They couldn't hold its antlers up. It died, you know. Well, I think the same thing happened up there with that barbed wire because I couldn't find barbed wire anyplace. There's one area where I stopped everybody and we had our lunch. We had sea rations, remember sea rations? Anyway, there was a little stream there that we had to cross. So I jumped down there with my gold pan, not that gold pan, a better one, and I got some gold out of there. So when I went back up there, I went over to the same place, and I could stand on what was the edge of that creek, and I could look down the ground 40 feet. That's how much that permafrost had melted. And down there, 40 feet down there, there was the creek. Terrible. Yeah, it was an ecological disaster. And it's been several years since I've been there, so I don't know if anything's been resolved about that. Probably not, you know. Nothing you can do about it, I guess, you know. So, yeah, we got a lot of stories about the north there. One of the things about the gold miners up there, in the wintertime, they would mine the gravel out of the permafrost. They would find these old creeks and rivers, and they'd crawl on their bellies mining that frozen gravel out of there, and they'd stockpile it. Because in the springtime, when it got warm, well, then they'd thaw it out and they'd placer mine the gold out of it. Well, there are places up there where you can be walking through the dense underbrush and you can hear this water gurgling. And you can walk over there and there might be a place this wide, and you can look down there and you can see that water. And what happened was that the tunnels they made had collapsed. They were even collapsing when they worked up there. There's dozens of people died, you know, from the tunnels collapsing on them. Yeah, I found a lot of stuff up there. I found some runners off of a sleigh. I couldn't carry them back. My International Scout was overloaded, so I took them up on a hill, put them behind a rock. Maybe they're still there. Maybe some tourist, maybe some Blue Jay from Toronto has got them. I don't know. There was a guy by the name of Haig, Hegge, and he was an itinerant photographer. And I don't know if it's one of the books I have or whether it is on the internet, but he took a photograph from number 6 below Discovery. He took a photograph from Doré Hilsinger's mining claim, and you can see it off in the distance. Yeah, he was an excellent photographer. There's just a lot of interesting stuff in there. I don't know, my Grand Forks book there. Grand Forks is like a huge town, and we'll finish with a little humor here. I'm up there, and I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to stake my claim, you know. And here's a pool of water. So I jumped down there in a pool, boots taller than that. Actually, I had my hip waders on. And I'm digging down in that pool, you know, and I'm digging the gravel out. And I'm panning the gold out of it, you know. And I look up, and here comes a tour bus. And the tour bus unloads with some folks from Japan. And they all get out, and they're just taking photographs right and left of this guy in the checkered flannel shirt and the hip waders down there in that big pool of water, getting the gold out of there. The only thing I found in that pool was a .38 caliber bullet and 2 glass stoppers off of glass bottles. Yes, Gary.
When you got up there, what was your diet? What did you eat?
I went to, I took a bunch of sea rations with me. And then I graduated to MREs. But when you go up at that time of year, fruits are readily available, you know, berries. And then all the way up there, you can, from the Native American girls, you can buy Bing cherries, and you can buy smoked salmon, which is the best in the world. You don't have to get out of your vehicle. Order a couple pounds of smoked salmon, you know, and you get down the road a little ways, and the oil is already leaking through the brown paper, you know.
Even though you were mining, did you ever get over to the Chilkoot Trail?
No. Have you guys been up on the Inside Passage? Okay. She asked about the Chilkoot Pass. When the I call it the invasion, when the gold rush started on the Klondike, the people got off the steamship in Skagway, and there was 2 ways to get there. You went through Daya, which was east of Chilkoot Pass, or you went over the Chilkoot Pass. Now, there's pictures in that book. I've got a beer mug that shows. You've seen pictures of these people. They carved these steps in the solid ice, and that's how they got up there.
What I found interesting, we saw the sign that said Chilkoot Trail, so we went over it and we walked on some of it. But this was all in trees, and the rock steps were steep. You know, when you think of these people and what they're carrying.
Oh yeah.
And then the main picture you see is all snow, so I'm wondering if that's past the tree line, because we were in the trees the whole time. We didn't go very far. We pooped out with those steep steps, but it was all trees.
Well, yeah, it started down there at the bottom of that hill, you know. Then it went to the scale house. Mm-hmm. Then from the scale house, it kind of evened off, and then it, surprisingly, this poem that I recited, they talk about Lake LaBarge. Well, that's the first lake on the trail to Dawson City. Yeah, and that's Daya. You didn't have to go up the steep trail to get there. Daya was pretty much flat, or not flat, but it had an incline to it. But yeah, that was the big jumping off spot. And of course, the big criminal up there was Soapy Smith, you know. And he came up from, I don't know, San Francisco or Sacramento or someplace. And I don't know whether they hung him or just run him out of town. But he was a terrible, terrible guy, you know.
Great sight for him up there.
Is there? He was kind of akin to Al Swearingen up in Deadwood. Yeah, if you take, you can take the railroad up there now, you know. Actually, they built that railroad before 1900. And it only took them like 6 months to build it. And the railroad goes from Skagway clear over to Dawson City. And it's like an excursion railroad today. And if you don't have a passport, you can't get into Canada. Well, the seats on the train just flip over. So you're facing this way, and when you come to Canada, you stand up and flip your seat so you're facing the United States. So, yeah.
We were told that how that was built was people had to hang down from the top of the mountain on ropes to put that bed in,
It's amazing.
and they're not very wide.
Well, did you see the big rocks that landed on those guys with their mules? They're bigger than this room. And they were headed for the Klondike with their mules and pack horses, and these huge rocks landed on them, fell off the mountain. They didn't try to recover them, of course, so they got grave markers there. Dead Horse Canyon, terrible, terrible deal. These people, they didn't want to, see, you had to have 1,000 pounds of stuff, otherwise they wouldn't let you into Canada. And then when you're going up the Chilkoot Pass, well, you hired the Native Americans, you know, and they laughed all the way to the bank, of course. And they had horses and pack mules and stuff like that. Where are you going to find grass in the middle of the winter? Those poor horses, they just had nothing to eat, and they just worked them to death. And Dead Horse Canyon had hundreds and hundreds of skeletons of dead horses in there. You know, terrible. But people were so intent on getting to Dawson City. There was on one of my trips up there, before I reach Dawson City, I'm going down this gravel road, and I look off to my left, and here's all these puffs of smoke coming up. So I wonder, what the heck is that? This is right where what they call Five Fingers Rapids are. So I turn around and I go back down there and I drive off the road down there towards the river where all these smokes are coming up. And what it is the Native Americans are catching salmon and they're smoking this salmon. But the source of their smoke is these aspen fires inside of these Yukon stoves. Yukon stoves made out of sheet metal. It's collapsible. And a ship was going down Five Fingers Rapids and crashed, and all these Yukon stoves washed up on the bank. We're talking like 1899. And so the Native Americans, they took them, and that's what they were using to smoke their salmon. They were building these fires in those Yukon stoves. And they came back every year and did that. Yep. They had different methods of getting around Five Fingers Rapids. One guy, really enterprising guy, early, he built like a railroad out of poles, you know, fitted end to end, like a railway. And he had horses that would travel along, and they would control the ships going through there by maneuvering the horses and the ropes and stuff so they didn't crash. Yeah, Five Fingers Rapids was one of the big obstacles. So, yeah, when you get to Dawson City, if you want to go across to Chicken, well, you got to take the ferry across the Yukon River, and the ferry that I took was the George S. Black, and George S. Black died, but his wife was pretty enterprising because she bought gold mines and she bought sawmills, and when she went back to San Francisco, she probably hired her own steamship. And then just east of there, of course, is what they call the Moosehide Slide. And it's a huge, huge, steep hillside. And people would get on these moose hides and they'd slide down that Moosehide Slide clear to the Yukon River. Just kind of like, we would do that today on snow or something. So, yeah.